Frustrated. I'm a doctor. I work here. I'm literally wearing my hospital ID.
Buddy, at this point I don't care. You are coming with me.
Is it because I'm black? That's why you don't care to even check my badge?
Maybe. Go ahead and slowly turn around and put your hands behind your back.
So you're arresting a doctor in his own workplace without confirming anything?
If you keep talking, I'll add resistance to you.
Rebecca Stanton had been working for the Seattle Police Department for 6 years, though she'd only spent 3 of those years actually out on patrol. Her coworkers knew her for something they called being overly watchful at hospitals, especially when calls came in about theft or someone pretending to be staff. One Wednesday night at Harborview Medical Center, her failure to look past her racial prejudice would end up costing the city $2.4 million and completely wreck her law enforcement career. A black man in his late 30s named Dr. Andre Bennett was simply walking down a hospital hallway on his way to the emergency room where he had a shift. He had on navy blue scrubs, a white doctor's coat with his name stitched right on it, and his hospital ID badge clipped where anyone could see it on his chest. There was no crime happening, no emergency unfolding, nothing suspicious going on, just a doctor headed to work. But when Officer Stanton spotted him, she jumped to a conclusion based purely on prejudice. She decided that a black man dressed in medical clothing had to be faking being a doctor. That wrong assumption set off a chain of events that included physically detaining him in front of hospital patients and staff, a degrading walk through the building in custody, and a federal lawsuit that would reveal how racial bias works even in professional places where people have clear ID badges. Before we go on, where are you watching this from? If you're new here, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. These kinds of stories need to get out there, and when you support us, it helps us bring more truth into the light. Harborview Medical Center is a major hospital right in the middle of the city where hundreds of people who work there walk the halls around the clock. White coats and scrubs are what people wear to work. ID badges aren't optional. Everyone has to wear them where they can be seen. It was 6:45 on a Wednesday evening. Shifts were changing. The hallways were full of nurses, doctors, technicians, and support workers moving from one department to another. Dr. Andre Bennett had been working as an attending emergency medicine doctor at Harborview Medical Center for 9 years. 9 years treating everything from people whose hearts had stopped to serious trauma injuries. He'd trained residents under him. He'd written research papers about emergency room procedures. He'd been put up for the hospital's Patient Care Excellence Award twice. The people he worked with trusted him. His patients had great things to say about him. His bosses thought of him as one of their most dependable doctors. But that evening, he wasn't focused on awards or being recognized. He was thinking about the pile of patients backed up in the ER, the 2 critical cases that had come in that afternoon, and whether he'd get a chance to grab some coffee before things got too crazy. Andre had left his car in the staff parking garage, walked through the skybridge that connected the buildings, and was heading down the main hallway toward the emergency department. He wore what he always wore to work, navy scrubs, a white coat, a stethoscope hanging around his neck, and his hospital ID badge clipped front and center on his chest. The badge clearly showed his picture, his name, and his department, emergency medicine, attending physician. He gave a nod to nurses he knew. He waved at a resident he'd taught. He was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he did every single shift. But Officer Rebecca Stanton didn't register any of that. Rebecca Stanton had started with the Seattle Police Department 6 years before, after spending 3 years working as a private security guard. The people who taught her at the academy said she was eager, but they also noticed she had a habit of making small situations bigger than they needed to be. She spent her first 3 years with the department doing community liaison work and desk assignments, jobs that kept her off the streets while her supervisors figured out if her judgment was sound. When she finally got moved to patrol, her reviews were all over the place. She was thorough and worked hard, but she was also quick to think the worst of people. In her 3 years on patrol, Stanton had racked up 7 complaints. 5 of those involved people of color who were stopped or detained in professional places where they clearly had every right to be. A black lawyer detained at the courthouse, accused of trying to sneak into an area he wasn't allowed in, even though he was wearing his bar association badge. A Latino chef questioned at his own restaurant after a customer thought he was just delivering food. An Asian doctor stopped in a hospital parking garage and told to prove he was allowed to park there. A black businesswoman detained at an office building, accused of trespassing, even though she had a key card and her company ID. Every single complaint got reviewed. Every single complaint got closed with the same kind of language. Officer acted within discretion, insufficient evidence of bias, recommend additional training on cultural competency. Stanton went to the trainings, she checked off the requirements, she sat through the workshops, and then she kept right on seeing criminal behavior in professional places, kept questioning credentials that should have been more than enough, kept assuming that people of color in positions of authority must be lying. That Wednesday evening, Stanton was assigned to patrol the hospital. Seattle General had been dealing with theft, people who weren't supposed to be in certain areas, and occasional problems in the emergency department. The hospital had hired the police department to have extra officers there during evening shifts. Stanton had been walking through the main hallway when a nurse, a young white woman named Brittany Matthews, mentioned to her that she'd seen someone she didn't know near where the medications are stored earlier. "Did they have ID?" Stanton asked. "I think so," Brittany said, "but I wasn't sure. He looked like he might be new." "What did he look like?" "Black guy, scrubs, I don't know. Maybe I'm being paranoid." "Better safe than sorry," Stanton said. "I'll keep an eye out." And there it was, the seed was planted. The suspicion turned on. When Stanton saw Andre walking down the hall a few moments later, her mind did the rest. Black man in scrubs might be pretending to be staff, could be stealing medication. Need to check this out. Never mind that Andre's ID was right there in plain sight. Never mind that he was clearly comfortable in the space, saying hello to staff, moving like someone who knew where he was going. Never mind that dozens of other workers were walking the same hallways in similar clothes without anyone questioning them. Stanton saw what she'd been trained to see, a black man who needed to prove himself. She walked fast to catch up with him. "Do you think hospitals need specific rules to stop staff from being racially profiled by security? Drop your answer in the comments." Andre was almost at the emergency department entrance when he heard footsteps behind him and someone calling out, "Sir, excuse me, sir." He turned around, thinking maybe someone needed medical help. He saw the police officer and his mind immediately switched to work mode. "What's the emergency?" he asked. Stanton walked up, her hand resting near her duty belt. "I need to see some identification." Andre's eyebrows went up a little. He'd been through versions of this before, usually in parking lots or elevators, but never in the hospital hallway while he was on his way to a shift. He pointed to his chest where his badge was clearly displayed. "My hospital ID is right here," he said. "Dr. Andre Bennett, emergency medicine." Stanton barely looked at it. "I need to see a driver's license or state ID." Andre felt that familiar weight of frustration settling in. "Can I ask what this is about? I'm heading to my shift." "We've had reports of unauthorized individuals in the hospital. I need to verify who you are." Andre's patience was wearing thin. He slowly pulled out his wallet, took out his driver's license and medical license, and held them out. "Here, driver's license, medical license, hospital ID badge, all with my name and photo. Now can I go do my job?" Stanton took them, looked them over with obvious doubt, then looked back at him. These could be fake. Andre stared at her, not believing what he was hearing. "Fake? You think someone made fake medical licenses and hospital IDs just to walk around in scrubs? People impersonate medical staff all the time. Not with 3 forms of identification, they don't." Andre waved his hand at the hallway around them. "Ask anyone here, ask the nurses, ask security. I've worked here for 9 years." Stanton's face didn't change. "That doesn't matter. You're coming with me to verify this." Andre's voice got a little louder, frustration breaking through. "I'm a doctor. I work here. I'm literally wearing my hospital ID." Stanton's tone turned cold and dismissive. "Buddy, at this point I don't care. You are coming with me." The words just hung there in the air. "At this point I don't care. Not about the identification, not about the badge, not about the verification she said she needed. She'd already made up her mind." Andre looked right at her, his voice steady but sharp. "Is it because I'm black? Is that why you don't care to even check my badge?" Stanton's face shifted slightly, not with shame, not with second thoughts, but with something closer to confirmation. Her voice was ice cold when she answered, "Maybe. Go ahead and slowly turn around and put your hands behind your back." Andre looked around. Other staff members were walking by, some glancing over with curiosity. He recognized a few people he worked with and saw their confused looks. The situation was drawing attention now. Several nurses had stopped at their station to watch. The hallway was filling up with people witnessing this. A resident Andre had mentored, a young woman named Dr. Lauren Hayes, came over quickly, alarm in her voice. "Dr. Bennett, what's happening?" Stanton pulled out her handcuffs, moving deliberately. "Ma'am, step back. This doesn't concern you." "He's an attending physician," Dr. Hayes said firmly, her voice getting louder with disbelief. "I work with him. You can't just handcuff him without a reason." Stanton's jaw got tight. "Ma'am, I need you to step away." Dr. Hayes didn't budge. This is insane. He's wearing his hospital ID. His name is on his coat. What are you doing? Deshaun Mitchell, the security supervisor, an older black man who'd worked at the hospital for 15 years, walked over quickly. Officer, that's Dr. Bennett. He's been working here since before I started. What's the problem? Stanton was surrounded now by people backing up Andre's story. Her assumption was falling apart under the weight of evidence she'd refused to accept from the beginning. But instead of backing down, instead of saying she was sorry, she finished what she'd started. Turn around, she said again, her voice harder now. The hallway went quiet, nurses stopped mid-step, other doctors paused their conversations. Everyone watched as Officer Rebecca Stanton approached Dr. Andre Bennett with handcuffs. Andre looked at the faces around him, his colleagues, his staff, people he worked with every single day, now watching him get treated like a criminal based on nothing but Officer Stanton's own admission. She'd said maybe it was because he was black and she was handcuffing him anyway. He thought about his patients in the emergency department, probably wondering where their doctor was. He thought about the medical students who looked up to him, now seeing him humiliated. He thought about his parents who'd pushed him through medical school, who'd celebrated when he got this job. And he thought about every single time he'd had to prove he belonged, every time his credentials weren't good enough, every time his skin color erased everything he'd accomplished. I'm complying under protest, Andre said clearly, his voice carrying down the hallway. I am Dr. Andre Bennett, attending physician, emergency medicine. This is my workplace. This officer just admitted race is a factor in my detention, and everyone here is a witness. He turned around slowly, the handcuffs clicked shut. A nurse started to cry. Dr. Hayes pulled out her phone and started recording. Deshaun Mitchell, the security supervisor, immediately called on his radio for the hospital administrator on duty. Stanton walked Andre down the hallway toward the security office, one hand on his arm, his hands cuffed behind his back. They went past patients in the waiting area. They went past visitors. They went past staff members who stopped and stared in shock. Dr. Bennett, a patient called out, an elderly man Andre had treated the week before. What's happening? Andre couldn't answer. His throat was too tight with rage and humiliation. By the time they got to the security office, the hospital administrator, Patricia Morales, was already there, her face white with fury. She took one look at Andre in handcuffs and turned on Stanton. What the hell do you think you're doing? That's Dr. Bennett, one of our attending physicians. Stanton stammered. I was verifying his identity. There was a report of unauthorized individuals. A report from whom, and even if there was, he's wearing hospital ID. His colleagues vouched for him. On what grounds did you handcuff him? He was uncooperative. I was protecting my dignity, Andre said quietly. I was refusing to be humiliated for doing my job. Morales pointed at Stanton. Take those handcuffs off right now. Stanton hesitated, then unlocked the cuffs. Andre rubbed his wrists, his jaw clenched tight. Dr. Bennett, Morales said, her voice shaking slightly. I am so deeply sorry. This should never have happened. We will be filing a formal complaint with the police department immediately. Andre nodded but didn't speak. He was trying to process the violation, the anger, the sheer absurdity of being arrested for being black in his own hospital. A police supervisor arrived within minutes, Lieutenant Vincent Duca, who'd worked with the hospital for years and knew the staff. He listened to Morales' account, watched the video Dr. Hayes had recorded, and spoke briefly with the witnesses still gathered in the hallway. Then he turned to Stanton, his face like stone. You detained a physician in his workplace while he was wearing full identification, with multiple witnesses confirming his identity. Stanton's voice was small. I was investigating a report. What report? Show me the incident number. Show me the dispatch record. There was no formal report, Stanton admitted. A nurse mentioned seeing someone she didn't recognize. Duca closed his eyes briefly, clearly struggling with his anger. You arrested a doctor because a nurse mentioned seeing someone she didn't recognize. Not someone stealing, not someone threatening, someone she didn't recognize. Do you understand what you've done? Stanton didn't answer. Duca turned to Andre. Dr. Bennett, you have my sincere apology. This was completely unacceptable. You'll have access to all reports, video footage, and body camera recordings. And I can tell you right now, Officer Stanton will not be working in this hospital or any other again. He turned back to Stanton. Give me your badge and weapon. You're done for the night. Stanton handed them over, her hands shaking. Should officers face immediate suspension after detaining any professional in their workplace without cause? Let me know what you think. By the next morning, the story had gone through the entire hospital. By noon, it had hit the local news. By evening, it was national. Video from Dr. Hayes' phone showed the whole thing. Andre being questioned despite having clear identification, colleagues backing him up, Stanton handcuffing him anyway, the walk through the hospital corridor in custody. Black doctor handcuffed at his own hospital, physician detained while heading to ER shift, Seattle cop arrests doctor despite hospital ID and witness confirmation. The Seattle Police Department put out an immediate statement condemning the detention. The hospital issued a public apology. The medical community erupted with anger. Doctors across the country shared their own stories of being profiled in professional settings, of having their credentials questioned, of being assumed to be janitors, orderlies, or security guards instead of physicians. Civil rights lawyers contacted Andre within hours. This wasn't just about an illegal detention. This was about the ongoing assumption that black professionals, no matter what credentials they have, must prove they're legitimate in ways white professionals never have to. The lawsuit named Officer Rebecca Stanton, Lieutenant Duca, and the Seattle Police Department. The charges were clear and devastating: unlawful detention without reasonable suspicion, racial profiling in a professional setting, violation of civil rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress, false imprisonment, failure to train officers on implicit bias in professional environments. The city's lawyers looked at the case and knew right away this couldn't be defended. Body camera footage and civilian video showed everything. Stanton questioning Andre despite visible ID, colleagues confirming his identity, Stanton handcuffing him anyway, the walk through the hospital in handcuffs while patients and staff watched. The city settled within 7 months, $2.4 million. Andre gave a portion of it to organizations fighting for equality in healthcare and police accountability. Officer Rebecca Stanton was fired 9 weeks after the incident. The termination letter got straight to the point. Officer Stanton engaged in racial profiling and unlawful detention of a medical professional in his workplace. Despite clear identification and multiple witness confirmations, she handcuffed and detained Dr. Bennett without justification. Her actions violated department policy, state law, and federal civil rights protections. Her employment is terminated immediately. Stanton's name went into the National Decertification Index. Her law enforcement career ended for good. She tried to appeal, but the union pulled its support once the medical community submitted formal complaints and the video evidence went public. Stanton put out a brief statement: "I made a serious error in judgment. I failed to properly assess the situation and caused harm to Dr. Bennett and the hospital community. I take full responsibility." No one cared. The Seattle Police Department faced intense scrutiny. How had Stanton, with 7 prior complaints involving racial profiling of professionals, stayed on patrol? Why had supervisors ignored the pattern? What training existed to prevent officers from questioning clearly identified professionals? Internal Affairs launched a full review. What they found was predictable: complaints filed but downplayed, training completed but useless, supervisors who didn't want to deal with uncomfortable truths about implicit bias, officers who sat through diversity workshops and then went back to patrol with the same assumptions intact. Reforms were announced: mandatory implicit bias training focused specifically on professional settings, real-time review of all detentions in hospitals, schools, and corporate environments, a dedicated oversight unit for discrimination complaints, community advisory boards with actual enforcement power. Dr. Andre Bennett didn't want to become an advocate, but the moment demanded it. He testified at city council hearings. He spoke at medical conferences. He gave interviews about the intersection of healthcare, race, and policing. His message was consistent: I went to medical school. I completed residency. I've been practicing emergency medicine for 9 years. I've saved lives. I've taught students. I've earned every credential on my badge, and none of it protected me from being handcuffed in my own hospital because an officer couldn't believe a black man could be a doctor. He paused during one particularly tough interview, his voice thick with emotion. My patients saw me in handcuffs. My students saw me treated like a criminal. My colleagues had to watch me be humiliated. And all of it happened because Officer Stanton's assumptions about who could and couldn't be a doctor were stronger than the evidence right in front of her eyes. The interviewer had nothing to say. This wasn't just a bad detention. This was a clear example of how racial bias works, even when credentials are obvious, even when identification is visible, even when multiple witnesses confirm identity. Officer Rebecca Stanton didn't see a doctor. She saw a black man in a professional space and assumed he must be lying, must be faking it, must be a criminal. She couldn't imagine that a black man could be an attending physician. She couldn't imagine that his presence in a white coat was real. She couldn't imagine that her mental picture of what a doctor looks like might be shaped by racism instead of reality. Her bias was so deep that she ignored hospital ID, dismissed colleague confirmation, and handcuffed a doctor in front of patients, all because her assumptions were more powerful than facts. Systemic racism in policing reaches into every space, including hospitals, where credentials should be beyond question. It's the assumption that black professionals must be questioned. It's the refusal to accept achievement when it doesn't fit stereotypes. It's the use of police authority to enforce who belongs in positions of respect and who doesn't. Rebecca Stanton's career is over. That's justice. The city paid $2.4 million. That's accountability. But money and firing people don't undo the trauma. They don't erase the memory of being handcuffed at work. They don't restore the respect that was violated in front of colleagues and patients. The real question is, what changes now? Do departments finally understand that racial profiling happens in boardrooms and hospitals, not just on streets? Do they finally train officers to recognize that credentials are credentials regardless of who holds them? Do they finally accept that questioning clearly identified professionals isn't being vigilant, it's discrimination? Because if we don't fix the system that put Rebecca Stanton in a hospital with 7 complaints and no accountability, if we don't address the bias that taught her to see impersonation instead of achievement, then we're just waiting for the next officer, the next victim, the next doctor who has to prove he belongs in his own workplace. Comment if this should be mandatory. Any detention of a credentialed professional in their workplace triggers automatic review and suspension pending investigation. And if you believe these stories matter, if you think professionals of color deserve to work without being treated as suspects, then hit that subscribe button, because we're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding change. We're going to keep fighting for people who have earned their positions and shouldn't have to prove it to biased officers. This isn't just about one officer or one doctor. It's about all of us and the assumptions we're willing to challenge or the biases we're willing to enforce.